19th, 2021. Clerk Nelson, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Karen,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Gates,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Rice, Councilmember Rice, Councilmember Schwartz,
Here, Owensboro, Kentucky.
Councilmember Traver,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Underhill,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Wolfersberger,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Rice, were you in Marshall?
Yes, ma'am, Marshall.
Thank you. We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. It doesn't look like Scott Lowridge is on the call at this point. Eric, are you seeing him?
I do not, sir.
Okay, so we will start then with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we will start this evening with the approval of agenda, starting with public comment on agenda items, followed by the consent agenda. Under 10A, public hearings, we have amendment of ordinance 70.17, animal drawn vehicles. Under 12A, under reports and recommendations, we have the sanitary sewer lining construction bids. 12B, we have the clarifier rehabilitation construction bids. And under 12C, we have the fiscal year 2022 budget process, followed by public comment on non-agenda items and council and manager communications. Any additions, deletions, or questions on the agenda as presented?
I'll move to approve the agenda for April 19th, 2021 as presented.
Support.
We have a motion by member Wolfersberger, support by member Schwartz, and we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member Rice,
Yes,
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
and Mayor Karen.
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you. That moves us to public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to address the council may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes, stating your name and address for the record. Please indicate your desire to speak by using the raise hand function on the bottom of the Zoom screen.
I think Patty Bowman wants to speak, but she's not. Oh, there she goes.
Okay, we'll start with Patty, please. Patty, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Patty Boffman. I'm from Twin Pines Carriage in Battle Creek. I come to Marshall on occasion, and during the winter season, as I stated in my little 4-page letter I gave to you guys, I don't know if you have any questions about what I sent, or if I can say anything further about what I put on here. Are you hearing me?
We can hear you, Patty. I don't know that we have any questions at this point. We will open it up for the public hearing. And at that time, if there's any questions, we will certainly ask those of you if you're able to stay on the call.
Yes, I can.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then it looks like Dennis is next.
Yeah, my concerns and curiosities are the same as Patty's. there are just some details in there that we'd like to discuss and potentially get amended. So we appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dennis. We'll speak with you shortly. Any other public comment on agenda items at this time? All right, seeing none, we will move on to item 7, the consent agenda. Item 7A, we have the Griswold Aviation Lease Agreement. 7B, we have the financial policies updates. 7C, we have the Calhoun County Fairgrounds Cruise to the Fountain event scheduled for July 3rd, 2021. Item 7D, we have the Oaklawn Hospitality Classic Race. Under 7E, we have the City Council minutes from the regular session on Monday, April 5th, 2021, and the special session on Monday, April 12th, 2021. Under 7F, we have the city bills totaling $941,181.71. Any questions, comments, additions, or deletions to the consent agenda as presented?
Mr. Mayor, I was hoping Karen might be able to speak to the changes in our financial policies and what the I guess what the procedural effects will be, specifically with the financial services for refunding, and if that would change anything we've done in recent history with regards to our city finances.
Karen, would you be available to answer that question for us?
I am.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for asking that question. So with respect to the 4 financial policies, 3 of them were updates and refreshes. So for debt, investments, and fund balance, we took a look at the language that was currently in there, what we needed to update. And for debt in particular, we really wanted a little bit stronger. We wanted some good refunding language in there. It doesn't change anything that you've done. What it does is the IRS had recently made some changes to what was available under refunding. We wanted to make sure that language is in there because when your bonds are eligible to be refunded to a lower interest rate, we obviously want to take advantage of that opportunity, but there are some costs in there. So we wanted to make sure we were solid and we could bring something to that policy so the council understood like at what point we would want to take a look at that refunding and what that refunding is, like refinancing our mortgage, right? When does that make sense to us? We don't do it every time the rate's lower because there's those expenses, right? It's the same thing for our debt that we have right now, but it doesn't change any of the debt issues that are currently on the table for the council's consideration. Does that answer your question, Scott?
It does, but I will actually move you on one step further into the interfund loans, and I guess
Yeah.
I guess I just want to make sure I understand if we're limiting
understand.
ourselves there in any way.
So my concern with the interfund loans is we made them. We actually, they did happen, and then no payments were made. And that's really a problem because when you make interfund loans, it's particularly with your rate-based funds, you have to make that promise to pay. You have to give that money back on the schedule of time that you agreed to it. And we're not doing that. And so I'm wondering until we maybe get this all sorted out, we need to take interfund loans off the table. And when we get everything cleaned up, if we feel like we can certainly have that discipline brought back in, then we can do that at that time. And, you know, because my concern is that we do have interfund loans and we are not making payments. And you have to have that financial discipline to go ahead and do that if you want to have interfund loans.
Okay, that was pretty much how I was reading it. That it was basically we were going to push the pause button on that.
Yeah. I
just want to make sure I was understanding it.
Yes. And then the grant policy is brand new. The federal government came out with new standards in 2016. If the city has to have a single audit anytime they receive federal funds more than $750,000 in a fiscal year. So the city has been having single audits because they have a lot of Section 8 funding from the federal government. with the new auditors coming on board, we want to make sure that we have not only the policy in place, but the internal controls that are tracking that grant money and making sure it's only being spent for things that it's supposed to be spent on, and like you would expect. And our new auditors will probably be expecting that policy, and I wanted to make sure that was on this agenda, and we have that all buttoned up for this fiscal year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any other questions for Karen at this time regarding the financial policies? All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda as presented?
Mr. Mayor, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jacob.
I just had a question about the Griswold Aviation lease. It says under section 3B rent, use of the main hangar is included, provided the tenant shall not interfere with any paying hangar tenants. I'm just wondering if, how many other tenants we have at this time, and just kind of what the use of that space looks like right now.
That hangar's fairly transient. There's only a handful of people in there, if any. And Craig only uses it when he needs to store things. Our T hangars to the east are full at this time. So from the main hangar, we weren't concerned about it. And Craig knows if there's paying tenants in there, he's not gonna take the spot.
Okay, and so when paying tenants come in, is that for short term, or are they month to month, or how does that work if short term tenants come in?
I know we had somebody there over the weekend. I will have to, being a new issue, I will have to get you an answer on that one.
Okay, so but it's more like by the night kind of thing, or?
I think that one can be any different way, because with the main hangar, it's wide open. It's not the separate. The T hangars are more individual.
I'm just wondering, because it's such a neat historic space. I mean, you could imagine doing a lot of cool things with that space, events, banquets, things like that, or, any number of things could happen in that space. And to just have it totally tied up for $500 a month, it just made me wonder how else it's used.
No, that where Craig's really with the $525 a month, he's using the space directly to the east of the main hangar,
Right.
The smaller one that's off the old terminal. Basically, what this lease is adding that little section of the old terminal to his area because he needs access to the bathroom, which is in that building. We're not using that space anymore, so with the new terminal in place, that's what we're covering on there. That's just a continuation of what we have with the main hangar, and we are limited on certain things for use for whatever FAA would allow. There are certain uses that are allowed with the airports, some that are restricted. So that's something as things pop up, we do discuss.
All right, just curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Wolfersberger, did you have a question?
I had a question for Director McDonald regarding the cruise to the fountain event. Just I noticed language, asking that we consider it, and so I was curious what. Are you aware of any other events that are going to be happening around the 4th of July in Marshall? Is this event aligned with County Health Department recommendations as they currently sit, or do we expect they will be by then?
Well, I can't answer that portion of it, but no, we don't have any other events. Typically, we had the chicken barbecue that weekend and the bicycle parade. Those have been postponed. I think one thing to be clear on this event, that the event itself is going to be on the fairgrounds, which is private property, and they've provided, and it's in your packet, a pretty comprehensive health plan for that. When they access our streets, they'll all be in their cars. We're not sanctioning them to stop. Basically, we're going to drive through town and drive right back to the fairgrounds. I do suspect, and this has nothing to do with the fair itself, but we typically get a good crowd of followers that will probably end up in town with that, but they are completely separate of the fair and that event.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, I'd seek a motion.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion from member Gates. And was that support from member Underhill?
Yeah.
Thank you. And we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Rice, was that a yes? I didn't hear anything. Councilmember Rice,
Yes, sorry.
thank you. Member Schwartz,
Yes.
member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
and member Gates.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That takes us to item 10A on the agenda under public hearings, the amendment of ordinance 70.17 animal drawn vehicles. Tom or Eric, would you like to brief us on this? And then we can have any discussion from council before we open the public hearing.
Really no comments. If, Scott McDonald is the one who put this together, so I think he'd be your best expert on this, but probably should open the public hearing. Again, some comments already been made, and then you can close the public hearing and then have discussions and ask questions of our two guests that we have online here.
All right, well, we will go ahead and open the public hearing. Please raise your hand, use the raise hand function to speak and state your name and address for the record. And Dennis, if you want to go ahead, please.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Excellent. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dennis McKean. My address is 313 North Marshall Avenue here in Marshall, Michigan. And my family's the owner of the Marshall Carriage Company. And first of all, we completely understand, regulations and the safety of the public and the concern for the city of Marshall bringing, carriages into town. There are just a few things of specific detail that we would like to address and potentially have amended to some degree. I have a letter that I can forward to you from our farrier about the use of non-metallic hooves on horses. He is by far more detailed and more educated in how they are used, what they do to the horse's hooves, what if they're necessary or not. But I will forward that letter to you if you request it. But basically, because we're a relatively small organization, the use of a non-metallic hoof like that or rubber hoof for our situation is detrimental to the horse, because you have to replace them typically every 2 weeks. And then it comes into a cost-based situation. And to replace them every 2 weeks is just an effort that is out of our reach. The cost to have someone come in to do that is astronomical. It turns out to be more than just a normal shoe. And to be very honest, he also says in his letter that for our circumstance, because we indeed are on the road so very little, that we don't shoe our horses to begin with. We do it in the winter to give them a little better traction and to be able to deal with the snow and ice. But through the rest of the year, we don't, because they're not on the pavement that much over the course of a day, let alone over the course of a week. Then the other concerns are, of course, in line 3D, number 3, there's an ankle cuff for a reflector that you're asking them to wear. I did talk to Mr. McDonald about some alternatives to more reflective items, either on the carriage or on the shave that holds the horse in. I just was nervous about putting a cuff on a 2,000-pound animal and the amount of training that it might take to get him to deal with that. could be interesting. You know, I don't know. We could put it on there and he may be completely fine, or he may not, you know, like it at all. We've all seen the videos where the dogs and cats have boots on, you know, how they don't want to walk with those. And if the training would take some time, you know, that would certainly cut into our potential for business. I am more than happy to put on, the note does say reflections on the corners and on the wheels. I'm very happy to put more than those on if necessary. You know, we also don't want to change the visual aesthetics of the carriage. I did buy some white reflective tape, so it will somewhat blend in with the white carriage, but yet serve the purpose of that. The other question I had was the use of the manure bags. I know this is a big issue in town, and before we had it, I was always an advocate of, why can't those people go out and clean up the poop? So my question is, there's a 2-hour time limit, you know, from the time someone sees it to when it gets picked up. My question is some of our tours are 2 hours long. I'm just asking that potentially that time be extended to 3 hours. So we have time to finish our tour, get back, take care of our horse, you know, clean him up, brush him out, and then go out and pick it up after our tour. You know, but the potential is that he does that sort of activity, you know, shortly after we begin, and then it would be at least 2 hours before we could get back to it. But those are the concerns that we have at Marshall Carriage Company. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dennis. We appreciate your comments. Patty, please go ahead when you're ready. Just unmute.
Okay, I am Patty Boffman. I am at 724 Joy Road in Battle Creek. I'm only in your town occasionally during the winter season, during the season of lights. I'm there for the 4 weeks. In 2019, I was there 2 to 3 nights a week. I did approximately 24 rides. This year I doubled that. In 2020, I doubled that. And I brought in people from Battle Creek, Springfield, Homer, Kalamazoo, Delton, Grand Rapids, Lansing. And I expect that I will have more rides this year. I was concerned also with the rubber shoes. Primarily, the rubber shoes are used in the big tourist towns, and they have the proper farriers to apply those shoes. They're not practical. They wear down. They do make a rubber tire, they call it. It is actually bolted into the metal shoe on the horse. They wear down quickly. They have to be rotated. The natural horse hoof should be tended to every 6 to 8 weeks on an average. This would require them to be handled more often, and it's extremely expensive. I contacted several people who have carriage companies who have been required to use the rubber shoes, and they say it's extremely expensive and they had to either give it up or not do rides during that season because they're extremely expensive to take care of. I had other questions on get my papers here, on the insurance. Sorry, I'm kind of skipping over some things. If you guys were thinking about doing it because of the damage to the roads, or was it due to the safety of the horses? The rubber shoes are not practical on horses, like wearing rubber boots for you guys. It breaks their foot down really bad, causes health issues. They don't wear nicely. It can cause lameness and strain to a horse's legs. Primarily the rubber shoes, like Dennis is talking about, are for therapeutic reason. If a horse has a sore hoof or an abscess or something that blows out, they like to use those. They're just a therapeutic thing to help them get through their medical treatment. You guys had on there the insurance requirement. I carry a high liability, just like what you want. Mine holds harmless for anybody that I'm working for. But I'm not hired by you guys to do this individually, so I don't know how my business affects with your ordinance. The state law, I also had a thing on here about the ankle cuffs. They're not very visible when you're driving down the road in the tight traffic that you have in Marshall. Of course, through the pandemic, there hasn't been a ton of traffic, so it hasn't been an issue, but there are hours like I started at 5 o'clock in the evening, and I did notice that there was a lot of traffic, and I don't think that they get the opportunity to actually see the reflective cuffs on the legs. I'm anxious to find some that will fit my horse. She has a lot of hair on her legs. It's difficult for me to find leg wraps, let alone something that's going to go around her ankles that typically fit the average horse that goes out on the trail. During the Christmas season, my whole rig is lit. My horse is lit. The back of my carriage is lit. I have lights all over the sides. I am anxious to talk with you guys as to, or the inspector, as to what kind of things I can put on my wheels that aren't going to damage the paint or my wheels or deflect any lighting when it comes to taking pictures at weddings. I use my carriage a lot at weddings. And I don't want to ruin somebody's wedding pictures by having a reflection back in the camera. So whatever I can do that can be temporary, put on, take off, that would make you guys happy and make my wedding carriage happy. The last question I think I've got on here is about the, not that it's been a problem for me. I don't have people drinking alcohol in my carriage. I never have, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to in the future. I have thought about talking with some of your businesses downtown to do promotions with the wineries. You've got in here that the vehicle cannot operate when a passenger has alcoholic liquor in the carriage. That's holding me to a higher standard than a typical limousine, which is able to have alcohol when they're hauling for weddings and what have you. When I talked to the Battle Creek Police, I haven't talked to the Marshall Police, and I haven't had a chance to talk to the Michigan State Police Department as to whether or not this is an issue. But when I spoke with Battle Creek Police Department, they said it was not an issue because I wasn't a motorized vehicle and I'm not doing the drinking. And then there was no fees for your licensing and your inspections. Didn't know if there was any, and if you had considered possible just permits for, because I'm not there all year long. I'm only there during the Christmas season. So that's all I have to ask or say.
All right, thank you, Patty, for your comments. Appreciate you being here, and the council did receive your letter earlier today. Any additional comments for the public hearing at this time? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Director McDonald, do you want to make any comments, and then we can kind of go through some of the questions that were asked?
The biggest thing I'll comment, then I guess you can ask questions, but we're talking about the shoes and so on, and I did receive a call from Mr. McKean, and he explained the financial detriment that would cause. So basically, I initiated this change to the ordinance in response to that, and basically what we are asking is that we take the shoeing requirement completely out of this ordinance. So a person could choose to use rubber shoes if they desired. They could use metal shoes, or and Mr. McKean didn't say it, but certainly he's welcome back on. It sounds like he prefers not to run a shoe at all, that his horse is more accustomed to that. So that was the trying to be responsive to that. When we put this ordinance together, we did look at some bigger communities, and that was on there. I don't think, based on what they both said, there's not going to be the volume of traffic. The shoes are going to damage our roads. I guess if we get lucky and get that kind of business, we could sit down and reassess that. But that was the main response for this.
Thank you. It sounds like the ankle cuff is also something that has come up in both of the comments. Do we feel like that's something that we could include in this change of ordinance at this time?
I have no preference one way or another. When City Attorney Sullivan and I sat down and put this together, we took a look at a lot of ordinances. We contacted some people out of state. Pennsylvania, I think I explained last time, due to their large Amish population, has a lot of carriage restrictions. Again, those were just added as a different way to provide safety. I am hearing things about, how it may affect their business, but we've got to keep in mind the public's entrusting us to make sure our vehicles are safe, just like we do motor vehicles. Their taillights work, their headlights work, et cetera, et cetera. I have no particular dog in the fight on this. If council wants to do away with that, just again, we're looking at mechanisms to possibly make these safer for the people who ride in them.
Thank you. Does council have any comments or thoughts on the cuffs in specific? And then we could maybe move on to the, 2 to 3 hours for the manure pickup.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have I guess I don't have an opinion on the cuffs, just not knowing, we kind of have some information, but I don't feel like we really have anybody that can give us an analysis and a recommendation on it. Is that if we could table the cuffs, but go ahead and address the shoes, I think that makes the most sense tonight.
Okay, any other comments from council?
Mr. Mayor, this is procedurally, we can't address the cuffs tonight. The ordinance change that was posted was just to address the shoes. So we would have to repost for a new public hearing to address the other issues.
Okay, thank you. Well, all those notes have been taken and we can follow up with those as we go along, but for this evening, we will just move forward with the shoes at this point.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I would like to, if I'm able to discuss the fee issue, because I'm sure people are curious about that. We have written up the rules and the policy for this. I did not do that till this ordinance passed, but we are not in the business to make any money. We're simply going to have a $5 fee, just a procedural fee, because it will cost the clerk a little time to fill out the forms. It'll cost somebody at the police department. Again, $5 for all your carriages. It'd be under one license. And then any other fees with the registration would be simply the iChat fee. These are not, in the old days, the police could run a criminal background check on vendors. That's been outlawed. So we would just have the state run an iChat or a criminal history check. And I believe that's about $10 per driver. So again, a one person operation would be looking at $15 a year. I just want to get that out there since it was asked and we didn't have an answer for order.
All right, thank you very much.
One comment.
Go ahead, Jim.
It'd be in conflict of our other ordinance. If they're doing business in the city of Marshall under the temporary ordinance, don't we have fees already assessed for that, Tom?
Yes, there are different fees. And that we would make sure that the fees here would, match the other ones that we have for vendors, peddlers, et cetera.
But, okay, but I thought anything like under a certain number of days, 90 days, 30 days, they're set fees if they're not a permanent business. So if we do the 15, that would be in conflict with the other ordinance, no?
Are you referring to the length of it or the cost?
No, the fees in general, because we already have fees set. So we're making another fee structure. Would that be in conflict with an ordinance we already have?
I think we'd have to compare because this is a different service rather than a vendor selling something door to door or peddler. So we'd want to make the comparison with that and bring all the fees back to you for approval. That's why we're not asking for those fees tonight, but we need to make sure that it's fair. Also, knowing from tonight the amount of trips that are being planned, we need to look at where they would fit into. I think I heard like 48 tours or something a year, but again, we can look into that. But you are correct from knowing about the peddler fees and stuff like this, where there's periods of times.
All right, any other questions or comments from council at this time?
I would just say the other issue that was brought up was alcohol in the carriages. And I think that might be another thing worth looking into. I could see a benefit from consumers enjoying a glass of wine as they ride in the carriage. If that is something that can be permissible, it doesn't conflict with other, existing laws or ordinances. I think it's worth looking into.
All right, thank you. Great, so the recommendation this evening is to adopt the amendments to the city ordinance chapter 70.17. If there are any further questions or comments, I'd seek a motion.
So move.
Support.
We have a motion from member Schwartz and support from member Gates, and we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Traver,
I could back up, Mr. Mayor. Are we, with all the address changes we've been discussing, what exactly are we voting for? Are we waiting for these? I guess I'm confused if I should vote no until we discuss those other things.
The only thing that we are voting for this evening is to strike the shoe requirements. All the other things have to be discussed at a different public hearing.
Separately.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Sorry to interrupt. Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member Rice,
Yes.
and Member Schwartz.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. And thank you, Patty and Dennis, for being present this evening. We do have these notes down and we can discuss this further, for a future meeting. So thank you again for your comments. Next, we have item 12A on the reports under reports and recommendations, the sanitary sewer lining construction bids. I believe Marguerite is going to brief us on this.
Actually, I think Alec is going to handle this. So Eric, if you can put Alec on.
Right there.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Alec Ignatuck, wastewater superintendent. I am bringing a couple items before you tonight. The first is the sanitary sewer lining construction bids. Many of you were on council in the August. Well, I don't know how many of you were on council in August of 2019 when we had a sewer collapse on Linden or Hanover Street, right near Linden, on the just north of the tracks there. Caused quite a issue for a few weeks while we had to expose that sewer and repair it. So we're moving forward with a lining project in that sewer line. We found a lot of corrosion in the concrete sewer pipe and in the upstream and downstream manholes where the collapse had occurred. So what we've done is we've gotten bids for lining the sewers and doing repairs and lining the manholes to prevent the corrosion from continuing. We had identified roughly $60,000 in the CIP for the next several years for lining projects, and as you can see in the bids that we received, our estimate is going to be used up by this one project this year. But with this bid that we put out, we also asked for pricing until June 1st of 2023 from each of these contractors so that we could plan lining projects in the next 2 fiscal years after this work is done. So as you can see, the low bidder of Corby Energy Services in Belleville was reviewed by our engineer, Stantec. They helped us with the specs, and they assisted us with the advertising, and then they reviewed the bids for us. They found Corby to be a reputable company that can handle the work that we've asked them to do. And so we're asking for you guys to approve a contract with Corby Energy Services in the amount of $52,695 with an additional contingency of $5,305. And then we are going to ask Stantec to oversee the work in an amount not to exceed $5,000. So if there are any questions, I welcome the questions.
Thank you, Alec. I just wanted to, I'm sure the council members are aware, but in the actual agenda, the amount is incorrect. That is only amount for the contingency. So the bid is $52,695 with a contingency of $5,305, plus the $5,000 not to exceed from Stantec for a total amount of $63,000.
Alec, I wonder if you could, I just don't, there's some details. How old are these sewer lines?
I don't have that. I don't have the age of these right in front of me, to be honest with you. I will say, I just was, as the mayor was talking, I was skimming through the report again, and it talks about the lift station that pumps into that particular stretch of sewer. The corrosion that in that area is due to the high flow from a lift station that's on North Fountain Street. Takes in about 15% of the city's wastewater on the northwest section of town, and it pumps and it discharges. It pumps south under Michigan Ave down to Linden Street. Then it comes down to Hanover Street. Then it comes east to Linden, and it discharges into the manhole just ahead of where the corrosion is really bad. And what's happening is there's a buildup of hydrogen sulfide in wastewater. And when that lift station discharges into that manhole, it releases that gas. And that gas is what's corroding the concrete pipe there. So as far as the age of the concrete, and honestly, before the next intersection with Mitchell Street, which is about 300 feet away, before you even get to that lift station, the pipe's in actually pretty good shape. But as the concrete continues to be eroded by this gas, it'll just keep extending down. So we are proposing to line 2 blocks where the concrete sewer is, just so this gas can't cause any more issues. But that lift station plays a big part in the problem. It also plays a big part in the cost of this project because they have to bypass that lift station while they're doing the lining for the manholes and the sewer. They have to eliminate that flow into that part of the sewer.
Was Corby or Stantec, either of them, able to provide a lifespan for these linings?
I'd have to ask Marguerite. Do you know the answer to that question? I really don't have that.
Typically, lining is extended useful life of another about 40 to 50 years.
Thank you.
If I may add one thing, most sewers are not concrete. Storm sewers are typically, sanitary sewers were either clay or now plastic. And because of the size of this, they probably at that point did not want to put in clay sewer because it may not be large enough. And that was, I almost guarantee it was before plastic pipe was put into the work. So what they did is they put a product in, not thinking of how the gases would affect the top of the concrete, and erode that away. So this is unusual. And as Marguerite said, I think you're definitely going to get, a good long time with this lining.
And I would also like to say, essentially, when they line the sewer with this two-part, it's a two-part. There's a sock, it's fiberglass, and then they impregnate it with a catalyst that hardens as it cures. And essentially, you're installing a plastic sewer pipe inside of the concrete pipe. So even as the concrete fails around it or corrode, I mean, it's not going to corrode anymore, but it could continue to break. As that happens, that the new pipe that's inside there is structurally independent from the original sewer pipe.
These pipes we're lining are 15-inch, so it is a pretty big pipe to be lining, and that's why the cost is as high as it is for 2 blocks.
Also, I did a sewer lining in my past employer, and that was 35 to 40 years ago. Similar product, and and they have not had any trouble on that line. So I can just give you a 35 or 40-year study, but can't go beyond that.
Is there any chance that if the concrete pipe continues to degrade, that we would see that impacted like on the surface street with degradation there?
Without any lining, yes, we absolutely would. I mean, it obviously.
I mean, like, if with the lining, even with the lining, it's, are we going to see this? Are we going to see results of this continue? If the concrete pipe continues to degrade, is it going to, could it impact the surface street?
No, I wouldn't expect it to. I mean, you've got the new plastic pipe is going to support the concrete. I was just merely saying that if it were to, crumble, I mean, essentially it's just breaking up underground. It's not going to create any voids or anything, because the new adheres to the inside of the concrete, so it's the full diameter, minus the thickness of the plastic.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any additional questions on the sanitary sewer lining construction bid? All right, hearing none. The recommendation is to approve the bid for the Hanover sanitary sewer lining contract with Corby Energy Services in the amount of $52,695 with an additional contingency amount of $5,305. Also approve the use of Stantec's construction engineering oversight in the amount not to exceed $5,000 for a total funded amount of $63,000.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion from member Wolfersberger, support from member Gates. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member Gates,
Yes.
member Rice,
Yes.
member Schwartz,
Yes.
and member River.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us
Thank
to item 12B, the clarifier rehabilitation construction bids. And I believe Alec is going to also update us on this.
Yes, thank you. So we had previously, you had approved the purchase of equipment to replace the clarifier drives and collector mechanisms in one primary and one secondary clarifier at the wastewater plant. So the purchase was made and expected to be delivered late June, early July, which lines right up with the start of our new fiscal year. And with that, we have went out for bids for the installation construction for that equipment. We broke it up into two separate projects because we decided to go with a direct purchase of the equipment from the manufacturer rather than having a contractor procure the equipment that we chose, which would likely come with some amount of markup, for a contractor to supply it. So we went out for bid. We had originally had an estimate of $325,000 per clarifier so two clarifiers would be $650,000. The equipment cost came in at $313,000 roughly. And so that left a little over $300,000 for the construction. Our construction bids came back, obviously, as you can see, a little higher than what we had originally anticipated. We did add in, as our engineering firm, Stantec, was going through and developing the construction documents, we decided to add in some concrete work in the vicinity of the clarifiers. A lot of the concrete down there is original to the plant, 1955. A lot of slabs of concrete have settled, causing some tripping areas and causing rain runoff to go places that we don't like it to go. And then also the sidewalks in the area are undersized. They're about 3 feet wide, and standard sidewalks these days are 5 feet, for mobility. And so we went ahead and added in a substantial amount of concrete to the project, which can account for some of that extra cost that we're seeing. There were actually four bids that came back. We've only listed 3 of them here because the fourth bid was over $900,000, so we didn't even include it in our project. I just wanted to mention that. So we had 4 bids of wide range of prices. Again, we had assistance from Stantec in developing our construction documents and our construction specifications, and then they assisted with bid advertising and evaluation of the bids. They reviewed all the bids and did confirm that LD Dosa Associates of Kalamazoo is more than capable with their experience in this field of performing the work that we've asked. Like I said, we would begin the construction project, after July 1st. So it's essentially for the next fiscal year. We also have in here contingencies, and then Stantec is going to handle the construction supervision. Their estimate is 5% of the total project cost, so $36,000, based on the total cost of equipment and construction. So we're asking for $407,000 with a $43,000 contingency, and then $36,000 from Stantec to be approved and taken from the capital outlay budget for the wastewater. Any questions?
I'll just ask one quick one. The LD Doxa has the city or I realize this is specialized work, but has the city or Stantec worked with this company before?
The city has not. I do not know if Stantec has worked with them. They are a reputable firm in municipal construction, though.
I don't know that Stantec has a recent project with them. They do work for the city of Battle Creek. This type of work is right up their alley as far as the type of work they do. And they will likely self-perform a lot of the work, which is good because they can manage the labor, in-house. So this is from, from all the projects they do, this is the type of work that would be right up their alley, if you will.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Alec regarding the clarifier rehabilitation construction bids? All right, hearing none, the recommendation this evening is to award the clarifier rehabilitation construction contract to LD Dosa and Associates for the amount of $407,000 with a contingency of $43,000. In addition, approve award of a construction engineering services contract with Stantec in the amount of $36,000. The total funded amount for the construction and construction engineering will equal $486,000 from wastewater department cash reserves.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion from member Gates and support from member Underhill. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member Rice,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
and Member Underhill.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank
That takes us to item 12C on the agenda, the fiscal year 2022 budget presentation. And I believe Tom and Karen are going to brief us on this.
We do have a presentation for you in a minute, Mayor. Last year, we did a similar process of reviewing the budget with COVID restrictions. And statistically, now we're in worse case than we were when we were doing the budget a year ago. So we'd like to do a presentation, and you can decide differently. What we're suggesting today is to present the highlights. The budget is now out on the website, so you can go there and pick it up, or if you desire, we can send it to you, but it is out there today for the public and you to review. What we'd like to suggest is that you review it, send any questions back to me. We will compile all the questions with answers, get those to you for your May 3rd meeting. At May 3rd, you would then can ask more questions, and then we would set a public hearing for May 17th and for possible adoption that night. So tonight we just want to touch base on some of the highlights. Then you could be thinking is, do you want to do a different review process than you did last year? But that would need to occur here in the next 2 weeks. So if you'd allow us, Karen has done most of the work, I'll be honest on this. I'm not a PowerPoint person, so Karen, I think you have control, and we'll jointly work through this. So
Great, thank you. Okay, so Eric, if you can move to the next slide. Here we are for our budget presentation for next fiscal year. So that'd be the fiscal 22, starts July 1 of 2021 and ends June 30 of next year. So the draft budget tonight that's out on the web, that already we found a couple things we wanted to fix. So so as with any budget, we put our best guess out there, and it's good for about 3 seconds, and then we have little things we want to tweak. So much like taking my children to Disney World and giving them a souvenir limit, I find that quickly changes with as the minutes go by. So tonight we're going to do this go through our budget process, hit some highlights, and as Tom discussed at the May 3rd meeting, we're going to set a public hearing that's required by state law. And on May 17th, we'll have the budget for the council to consider and adopt if they so choose. The only rule about the budget is that we have to adopt before June 30th. So and then over the next month, if you want to send your questions to Tom, and then he and I will coordinate those answers and make sure that we have everything compiled. Thank you, Eric. Okay, so for the general fund, quickly through the highlights, we do have $282,000 for capital improvements, $81,000 for one-time operational needs. We did include additional funding for pension and OPEB corrective action plans that were previously approved by the City Council. We have additional funding for the dispatch contract and for the city attorney. The dispatch contract has been underfunded for what we're being charged for some time, so that's a correction. And then some more money for city attorney. We are using $457,000 of our fund balance for those one-time items. And so within any budget, it's always good to save your one-time, save our one-time revenue to match our one-time expenditures. So use of fund balance is appropriate if you have it for one-time items. We did not include any additional stimulus funding. This is such a hot topic right now, but we do not know enough about the state and federal requirements for this money. So as soon as we do, we'll be back with how that would impact the budget for next year. And then for special revenue funds, we have one new fund for the street millage levy. So that's going to have bond proceeds in it. It's going to have the construction activity for the next couple of years. And then for the next several years, we'll have debt service in that fund. So we can make sure we pay down our bonds. And in enterprise funds, we added a solid waste fund. So that's for the new solid waste activity for the single hauler. The fiber to the premises fund and the electric fund are now budgeting a surplus based on what the City Council has adopted for fee changes and or rate changes. You'll note the electric fund was based on the rate change all happening in year 1, but it was split over years 1 and 2, and there wasn't enough time to change that budget in the book already. So it only affects revenue, and we will come back to the council to amend that budget during next year's cycle. Eric, can you go to the next slide? So overall, some major budget assumptions. Property taxes in the general fund went up about 3.83%. So the assessor and the treasurer worked to get that together, and that's good news because the state sets the CPI for taxes, and CPI this year was only 1.4%. So that means that you've had some new construction and new taxes you were able to put on the roll. And then the utility charges for services are just based on rates approved by City Council. Wages are 3% for non-union increase was added, and then as outlined in any of the approved contracts. So Tom, was that also 3% for all the approved contracts?
That is correct, yes.
And then we added no new net full-time employees, but we did move some things around to accommodate the needs of the organization. So for benefits for health, dental, life, that went up 6.47%. That is quite a bit better than I think the city had last year. So it was a double-digit increase. And that can also be a double-digit increase into the future. So that's a cost we definitely want to keep an eye on. The electric rates, because we have not increased our own electric rates, even though obviously our electric rates that we're paying will go up based on the rates that went up. So we will have to do a budget amendment next year. If we find that, for example, the water plant is paying quite a bit more in electric because of those rates, we'd have to do a budget amendment. So that just happened at the same time that we were putting budget together. So we weren't able to incorporate that. Next slide. So general fund revenue, $8.3 million is the budget. The big chunk of it, of course, is property taxes and the admin fee. And that's half of your general fund is property tax. So another big chunk for the general fund is what we call intergovernmental. It's mainly state shared revenue. And the thank you, Eric. The transfers in represent the other funds paying the general fund for overhead. So that's $1.7 million. So we call that transfers in, but really a very small amount relates to transfers in. It's actually related to charging overhead out to all the other funds for general fund activity. And then we have, of course, the rest of all the other revenue that's much less of the pie. Can you go to the next slide, Eric? So for general fund expenditures, we have it broken out by area. So in this area, our big, as with any general fund, our big, a big part of our pie is public safety. So that's $3.8 million. Our general government area is $2.3 million. We talked about that we've budgeted $282,000 for capital outlay. And then we go on and we have some public works, and then we have our other areas. So if you can go to the next slide, Eric. So
Karen, maybe I can, let me take over
yeah,
for
so
this a
Tom,
little bit.
you said highlights, but this is pretty the highlights and the lowlights. This is all the notes from the general fund. So go ahead.
What I have here for you is just showing on the personnel side. First, we're adding a police department detective position. We're reducing one full-time position in the rec department. We're eliminating part-time code enforcement and doing code enforcement a little different. We're eliminating the crossing guards. We're doing a furlough program for non-union employees. Eliminates all the education and travel expenses for city manager, human resources, and city council. It eliminates the city manager's contracted vehicle. Karen had mentioned about using fund reserves for capital and one-time expenses. I wanted to list this here. So as part of those, we want to do a classification and compensation study. We need to improve our website. We have a patrol car changeover, some parking lot repaving, updating of the cost allocation study. That's where we have the transfers from other funds. Police and fire department radios are quite old. At the PSB, the Public Services Building, we need to replace an air handler. Those units are 20 years old now. City Works, there was a presentation done a couple months ago. It's actual implementation. We're going to be needing to replace one of the fire department trucks. So this would be a deposit, $50,000 deposit, probably going towards a $500,000 truck that we would probably do a installment loan, but we haven't got that far yet. Public Services Building carpeting replacement. That building is now 20 years old. Fire department clothing, safety equipment, GIS master plan, and some tree replacement. And it also uses $100,000 from the Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund, which is there for operations, and we have not tapped that in quite a long time. Go ahead, Eric. I'm not sure the next slide right now. Okay, Karen, you want to take back over?
Yep, you bet. So we just included an overview of this slide. So these are special revenue funds and authorities. And I included this slide to see so you can see the perspective of what's happening in your special revenue fund. So before the new municipal street fund, major streets was your biggest special revenue fund, followed by LDFA. So now we have municipal street funds. So we're going to see a little bit more when you look at major local and municipal streets. We're doing quite a bit for streets, which is great news for the community. And then we have leaf, brush, and trash fund is a little bit different now because we have a little bit higher levy. So able to do a little bit more there. And the LDFA and your neighborhood improvement authorities, those will change as more taxes captured in their areas, they'll have more revenue and they'll be able to do more with the budgets that they have when they capture more revenue. So Eric, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. And then our enterprise funds. So you can see electric really is the big big fund here. So we have water and wastewater, fiber to the premise, Marshall House, all those are solid waste, or all those are enterprise funds. And then we've added our solid waste fund. So that's a small fund in comparison, but the state decides how we, you know, what kind of fund types they are and how we do that. And it changes how we account for things based on the type of fund that it is. So it's just important to note that enterprise funds are to be run like a business, and they have depreciation and all these things. And we have to make sure that we have full cost recovery and we're charging rates to cover our costs. Next slide. So for enterprise fund notes, we did add a GIS technician. Water and sewer funds, or water and wastewater funds, are splitting that cost. The DART budget, we balanced the DART budget, and then we realized we are having a really hard time hiring part-time staff. So Tom has worked on a hiring plan to perhaps increase those wages. And Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about that here, or would you rather wait till later?
Just real quickly is the county is looking at going to a countywide transit system. And so to staff our current dollar ride, we're going to have to raise the hourly wage. So we haven't come up with the exact formulas yet. And we are looking at using some of the fund reserves that Dollar Ride has to get us to the point where the countywide transit would take over. Again, that's going to be a vote of the entire county. There's stakeholder groups, and I happen to sit on the stakeholder group and the steering committee, and COVID has put us behind taking this to the voters. So there'll be more to come on this.
Okay, next slide, Eric. Okay, so internal service funds, we have 2 internal service funds. So this is where we aggregate data processing costs, which is so funny because that's a totally 1990s term. I used that for my old internal service funds a long time ago. So these are technology costs that go into data processing, and then motor pool. And it's typical, the reason why we actually use internal service funds is all our revenue comes from all the participating funds, and then we spend money based on, there's elaborate spreadsheets behind the scenes, but we do this so we smooth costs over time to all the other funds. And then the motor pool fund, for example, when it's time to buy those new vehicles, you can see their expenditures outweigh their revenues, but they've saved up the money to buy those vehicles. And that's why you see this it looks like a large disparity between revenues and expenditures, but that's the nature of these funds. And that's what we want to do. We build up money over time so we have the money to spend. And this way your operating funds aren't taking that big hit for, let's say, a $300,000 vehicle, specialized heavy equipment or something like that out of their fund. And that really skews with normal operations. So Eric, can you go to the next one?
I'll go ahead and take this one, Karen.
You do that.
We looked at the data processing fund and its fund reserves and felt we could reduce the fees this year by 20%. So you'll see that within the budgets. And I also listed here the major vehicles that are in the capital replacement. It's this year, with end loaders and plow trucks, this is a fairly light year. We have one bucket truck that needs to be replaced. We have a patrol vehicle, mower, some multi-purpose vehicles, and then replacing some 19 to almost 20-year-old, it's from 19 to 14-year-old vehicles in the way of pickup trucks. So this is what's in the actual, when you go to motor pool and see the capital expenses. Okay, Eric, go ahead.
I think
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay.
That's all there is.
So if we could take that down. So what we're recommending, and it's up to you if you want to have work sessions like we have done prior to last year, we can do that. However you feel, or if you want to, just thinking with the outbreak of COVID, what has happened in the last 6 weeks, it's just suggested similar to last year. So we are open for how you want to review your budget. Once basically I'm turning this over to you. We do have some time frames, so I will open it up to however you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Tom and Karen. I appreciate that. If you could send that PowerPoint out to the council, that would be helpful as we start reviewing the budget. Council members, any feedback on how you'd like to move forward with this process? Tom kind of mentioned how we did it last year. Is that a comfortable way to start? And then as we review a little bit more and decide, if we have more questions, if there's a need to get together, we can do so.
I don't know what you did last year. I wasn't part of anything.
Yeah, I would say yes, Mr. Mayor. As you said, I think for me, doing it the way we did it last year would be okay. If we could have the actual budget sent out along with the PowerPoint, just to save us tracking it down on the city website, that would be helpful though. Thank you.
So Councilmember Schwartz and Member Rice, we'll take the budget, and over the next couple of weeks, we will review that and formulate questions. All of them will be sent to Tom. He will compile those questions and answers and then present those to us. And then we can decide at that point if we want to continue, with a meeting, a work session. But that's a good way for us to get our first round of questions and things through, and then we can decide if we need to continue to work on the budget from there.
If I may, Mayor, we will send this out. It'll be probably in 3 emails. You'll have the PowerPoint presentation. The budget actually is 190 pages long. So we will send that, and then we'll send a corresponding email saying that it was sent. So please let us know if you don't receive it, or if it's too large a file. Then we can go to a flash drive and hand deliver those to you if necessary. So tomorrow, expect to see 3 emails from Tricia or myself, and then acknowledge that you have received it. Again, because we're letting you look this again, do not do a reply to all. We don't want to violate any of the Open Meetings Act, but we'll compile those questions and get answers out to all of you. So you won't be just seeing your answer, you'll be seeing everybody's questions at that time. Thank you.
When do you want these questions by, so we can get them back in order to determine if we need to get together?
I would really like to have them back by April 29th, which is Thursday. That'll give me a day or two. And if you get them in early, we'll start compiling those. The staff will, but we'll have that sooner the better. But let's maybe make April 29th the cutoff. And you will have opportunities also in the weeks to come at the meeting. So you may think of something later that I'll guarantee that will happen.
All right, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Karen, thank you for the PowerPoint that helps us get started. And we will definitely dig into this and forward you all of our questions, Tom. Any other council member comments on the budget process at this point? All right, thank you. We will move on now to item 14 on our agenda, public comment on non-agenda items. Anyone wishing to address the council may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes, speaking their name and address for the record. Please indicate your desire to speak by using the raise hand function in Zoom. And it looks as if we do not have any attendees at this time. So we will move on to council and manager communications. Any council members have anything they would like to share this evening?
I do. I saw on the Ketchum Park, their posting that they had volunteers use their own lawnmower to cut that long grass between like the park or the playground and the new facility. And I saw one of the comments saying that the city's been asked before to use like a brush hog or something like that to cut that down, but with the new tractor it doesn't work. The hookup doesn't work. Just seeing if that's true, and if that's something down the road we can look at helping them out instead of using their own tractors to do it or their own lawnmower to do it.
Yes, Ryan, that was brought to my attention today as well. I've been in contact with Phil Smith, who is going to be looking into it and getting back with me, but it is, we are aware of it and it will be taken care of. Any other council comments?
I just want to make a comment to Ed. Thank you very, very much for all you've done. I appreciate your leadership when I was working with you. And Godspeed in whatever you decide to do, and thank you again.
Absolutely, Ed. Congratulations on your retirement. I appreciate all that you've done for us in your time here. It's definitely been a pleasure working from you, and we'll continue to move the needle forward after you go. So thank you for everything. Manager Tarkowitz, any comments?
Were you going to bring up strategic planning?
Yes, I was. Thanks for the reminder.
Okay, that's all I have.
We are, after polling the council, we have decided that those first 2 dates that we sent out is not going to work for everyone. So Tom is going to contact Lou Bender and get some dates later on in the summer, and we'll send out a doodle to everyone or a meeting request to find out what will work with everyone's schedule. So just keep your eye out for that. And Clerk Nelson, any comments this evening?
I have nothing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If there are no further comments, I will call this meeting adjourned. Hope everyone has a great evening. Thank you.